Shaun Tan tells an immigrant story using only images. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a graphic novel that I've read. I am on that graphic novel grind. And today's story is all about immigrants and strange animals and weird foreign places. I am referring to The Arrival by Shaun Tan, which was published in 2006, and this is quite a doozy. For those who don't know, Shaun Tan is an Australian writer and illustrator. They've written a couple of sort of children's stories, some graphic novels here and there, and I think comic books in general, same thing as graphic novels really in some ways. So like Shaun Tan has won a number of awards for his work, and also he's gotten some of his work turned into short films or something like that. So very well published and well known as well. And a lot of the stuff that he writes about is maybe something based on his own experience or his parents' experience, because this is the story of an immigrant, and his father was an immigrant to Australia, and he often he tells unusual and unorthodox stories without using he sort of talks in abstractions because it's not very direct. Sometimes this can be abstract, which makes it very interesting. I'm definitely going to recommend this to you out there. So I highly recommend that you go out and read it first before you watch this video, because I feel like even just talking about images spoils some of the high quality aspects of this. So make sure to do that, and then come back and watch this video so we can have a discussion or something like that. But without further ado, let's talk about The Arrival. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Arrival, as I mentioned previously, is told entirely by images, so some of this might be open to interpretation. So I highly recommend that you seek this out to get a full understanding of it for yourself. But The Arrival focuses on a man from a certain country that seems to be going through some turmoil. He's preparing to leave his family for another country in the hopes of better opportunities and to provide a better life for his family down the road. We see in some images that there are dragons or dragon-like animals in the city causing some hardship. Whether that's literal or figurative is probably up for debate there. But the man goes on a ship. He makes some origami of some sort in an effort to sort of connect with his family better. And then he goes through customs, which is kind of confusing and very exhausting. He moves into an apartment after somewhat of a search, and inside that apartment is a very strange looking animal that looks exactly like this. It just sort of follows him around, and there's a bunch of other sort of similar creatures following people around in this world. It's never really explained what they are, but they do seem to be friendly. And so the animal kind of helps the man sort of find his way around. He seeks help getting through the city, and he manages to ride an airship where he connects with another woman who used to be a foreigner as well. Also seems to have one of these strange animals sort of sitting on her shoulders. And eventually he's able to find a place to get food. Although the way that they get food, which is in tiny boxes, is again very, very strange. But the man receives some help from a father and son. The father recalls his own sort of experience coming from a place where there were giants in general, with flamethrowers of some sort causing havoc, eventually leading to this man to leave. And then a short while later, this man is looking for a job. He tries his hand at some of them, but it doesn't seem to be a match because he doesn't really understand the language or the customs of this place. But he eventually gets a job in a factory where he makes friends with an old man who used to be involved in a war that that left him injured, and he eventually made his way to this strange new place. The man and this old man make friends, and then time passes. The man gets adjusted to this new place, and seems to be writing letters to his family, doing pretty well. And then eventually the family arrives to live with the man. They've immigrated to this place as well, and things seem to be going well for them. They take new photos suggesting that they're adjusting pretty well. And as the story comes to a close, we see the daughter of this man helping a lost visitor find their way around the new city, suggesting they are paying it forward and helping people as they were once helped. In terms of analysis, there's quite a bit worth talking about with The Arrival. A very fascinating story. I always find it interesting when graphic novels prefer to do less is more, sort of telling a story without using too many words. I know that Batman Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on a Serious Earth by Grant Morrison does that, and I think Grant Morrison does a pretty good job with that, but at other times it can feel pretty gimmicky, and I don't think that's the case here. I think Shaun Tan manages to tell a very interesting story through sort of ambiguity, through sort of confusion and just wonder of the images at hand, which you might have seen throughout this video. But one of the main things that Tan is writing about here is that of the new and the strange. So Tan writes an immigration story using only images, and the protagonist understands nothing about their new country. It's just a very strange place. They don't really understand how to get to airships. They need the use of a map, which they can't really figure out what the shapes on it mean. There's weird symbols. There's strange creatures following them around, which they might not have had in their native country. And in fact, I think there is some sort of confusion where the man sees a very somewhat dragon-like creature when he's talking with the father and son, when he sees that dragon creature, he briefly panics and he's like, "Oh my goodness, this is what I saw back home, and it was terrifying and caused me to leave." And that sort of creates a connection, because the man then talks about what it was like before he had a son in a place with big old giants and whatnot. So somewhat of a connection there, but there is no common language between the man and the people of this new country. It's sort of relying on gestures and drawing images of like a bed to symbolize, hey, where do I find an apartment? Where do I go to sleep? That does seem to help, but it is exhausting not really knowing a common language, of trying to navigate this new place without understanding much of what you're even doing there. How are you supposed to get around? How are you supposed to find streets and find food and things like that? It can be a real struggle, which is probably what a lot of people experience in this day and age, and really historically too, because a lot of people have always emigrated to new places, and especially in America, where you see a lot of immigration take place. It certainly helps you better understand those people by reading this. And while it is kind of confusing, I will say people are still welcoming in the city. Everyone who the man asks for help does try to help in some way. The people who hire him are less friendly about it, because they're just like, "Why are you screwing up?" or something like that. So that's the only kind of qualm about the man's sort of adjustment. And I do think there's a lot of bonding that takes place over the common journey. Like, all these people have kind of been through similar things before, in terms of trying to escape a horrible past of struggle and strife in another country, and finding a way in the new world. So no matter where these people are at in their journey, some who have been here a bit longer, they've all sort of experienced something similar, and it allows for empathy and that shared connection to really form. Tan also makes use of ambiguity in this story. The art styles suggest dual meaning at a lot of the time, whether it be when the man is trying to get food, or when he is trying to ride in the airship, or he's communicating with other people. There's a lot of scenes that aren't really straightforward, kind of abstract, and allow for the reader to kind of interpret it one way or another. Ultimately, the story is about a man adjusting to a new world. Like, there's that thing that Tan is trying to say, but there's a lot of ambiguity in how you get there. Like, what do the strange creatures, in particular, like this, what do these represent? Are they talking avatars, sort of spirit animals of some sort that follow characters around and are a part of them? Are they just funny-looking pets that exist in this world and are really friendly? Are they fellow sort of creatures that live in this world and have sentience in the same way that the humans do? There's a lot of questions that I think you could ask about that Tan doesn't directly answer, but it adds a little bit more mystique to the world and a little bit more ambiguity in terms of what they mean. As I mentioned before, when the man is sharing like a dinner with a father and son, the father is talking about his experience, and he sees large men with flamethrowers. What exactly does that represent? Is that there in the world? Is it meant to be taken literally? Like there are actual large men out there? Like are there actual dragons in this man's original world? Or is it meant to be taken figuratively? Like these represent fascist or evil authoritarians or things like that, where they're not literally shooting flamethrowers at people, but they are doing a lot of harm, and their power makes them feel like giants. Personally, I think it might be it might be the latter, where this is all metaphors and figurative, and it's just depicted in that art way is to be surreal and communicate a key point. But it could also be literal, because this world looks pretty fantastic. It doesn't exist with the same rules that exist in our world. So this could just be Tan sort of communicating that point more literally than anything else. But I do think it still highlights like fascism or authoritarianism and the dangers of those types of people who live in that type of world. So there is some ambiguity, but there is overall a main point that, again, is trying to be made there. And ultimately, because we don't know, because there is that ambiguity, the readers are just as uncertain as the protagonist here. Like, the readers don't really know what to make of this world. It's every bit as foreign to them as it is to the man who's immigrating there. So it does help put us in the mindset of someone who would be unfamiliar with this kind of place. There are other interesting aspects of the story as well. The kind of mindset that all are welcome in this world, that immigration is sometimes a necessity, and it's important to be friendly to those who are immigrating and show empathy, because you might have been in their position at one point. And even if you weren't in their position, it's still important to show empathy towards people who are lost and kind of confused. The idea of passing it on, the help that you were given, you should give to others. We see that with the man and his child in this story, because the man was kind of confused, and certainly the daughter was confused, but once they're able to settle in and everything, they eventually help someone else who's sort of lost and trying to find their way. The art also kind of creates a mythical story element to this. Like, this is a world where of fantastical contraptions, of airships that roam around, of giant creatures that are good, and also giant creatures that might cause harm. It feels like someone's, telling a very tall tale when they're telling this story. And then the art helps do that, but I do think the art is largely poetic, again, communicating quite a bit in each panel, and sort of creating a really strange and really compelling world that you really want to see more of and continue reading so you can see more of that art. And I do think the shading also adds a lot to the story as well, because with some of the shading, it makes characters look certain ways, like sad, or it makes things look scary or more lighthearted than anything else. So Tan does a really good job with this art in this story. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Arrival. A very good graphic novel, very short, and usually I'm not a big fan of ambiguity. I like to know exactly what I've read, and people not sort of leaving you with questions, but I think Shaun Tan does ambiguity well here. So I highly recommend that you seek this out, find it at your local library, or possibly purchase it like I did. This was on my 2025 TBR, so I'm glad to be able to cross that off. If you have any thoughts on this, or you simply want to comment on what I've said below, or said before, say something below. I would love to hear from you and have a conversation about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this or the author if they're not already familiar familiar with them. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and immigration-based travels. Farewell.